Welcome to 412 Sports Talk, the number one podcast for Pittsburgh sports. Steelers, we talk it. Penguins, we talk it. Pirates, yeah, we talk it. With the biggest guests.
Bob Pompiani, Pittsburgh legend. Mayor Bill Peduto, the mayor of the city of Pittsburgh, is on with us. Doran Dickerson, West Allegheny legend.
Trey Essex, welcome.
Available on iTunes and Spotify. Hosted by Mad Chad Nolan.
It over too much. Well, now he's not turning it over at all.
And Eddie Provident.
We've got the best team in football.
And now, 412 Sports Talk.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the 412 Sports Talk, brought to you by McM Studios. I'm your host, Eddie Provident. With me, as always, is the Assistant General Manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins, Mad Chad Nolan. And we've got a big one today, guys. I'm sure everybody has heard about the RMU hockey situation by now, if you live in Pittsburgh or if you follow hockey in any capacity. And we've got one of the guys that has the best beat on the situation right now. DK and him wrote he wrote the article for DK Pittsburgh Sports, but it was one of the best articles on the situation, if not the best. I think Jarrod has the best grasp on it. Jarrod Prugar of DK Pittsburgh Sports, a member of the FWAA, a football coach, a squash coach, a baseball coach. My man does it all, and he's taking down Chris Howard. So Jarrod, basically what I'm going to do is just let you take over because I'm already fumbling over my words. There's so much to unpack.
If it was Chris Howard, he'd be getting flamed.
Man. So we all know that RMU abruptly just shut down their men's and women's hockey programs. We were never really given much of a reason why when it actually happened. And that's where you come in. That's where DK comes in. That's where this whole thing starts to unfold. Your article on June 1st, I've retweeted it. It is out there for free if you want to check it out. But basically, I'm going to hand the reins over to you. What is going on, man?
Right. So last week they decided, for some ungodly reason, to cut the hockey programs. Right. So I'm reading that press release, and it comes across. Or I see the centennial celebration of Robert Morris is founded in 1921. It's awesome. Good for them. And then right there, it says we are discontinuing our hockey programs. And okay, that's a little confusing there. Like the girls' team was wildly successful. The guys' team was nationally ranked. And in that same press release, and this is kind of what started to get the ball rolling in my head, right, is they said they raised $100 million and wanted to focus on diversity and inclusion. And they didn't want to sponsor the Pittsburgh Speaker Series, which is where they've had some famous names come in and talk. And I get that. That makes sense. COVID's got financials all messed up, but they said they wanted to maximize diversity and inclusion on campus, and they fundraised this amount of money and then said they didn't have the money for the hockey team. And it's a Memorial Day weekend, little people are away. They want this story to go away. Robert Morris wanted that story to go away. Mm-hmm. And then Kevin Colbert steps down, and you're like, oh, okay, well, this is a guy that graduated from Robert Morris. Was a member of the sport management program. And when I was a student at RMU, he was all over the place. So obviously he needs no introduction. And then it comes out and DK and I find out that, well, this dude resigned because of this situation. And I'm like, okay, well, the ball is now rolling downhill. And I'm like, okay, well, why did he resign because of the situation? Well, then we find out there was no vote. And to me, and Dr. Howard alluded to this, if you've never been in a boardroom in a press conference or a boardroom ever, the way that he made it seem, us media people have never been in a boardroom, and that's say that however you want it, but we find this out and there's no vote. And to me, that is just astonishing that this prestigious university doesn't have a vote to eliminate two of its prominent programs. And that started the steamroll, and here we are.
How does, for those of us that don't know how that works, like how does it, like how does a decision that big get to be made without a vote? Like for those of us that aren't aware of how that process works.
And I think that's what we're all trying to figure out, right? So we asked, and that was one of the questions I asked during his media availability. I want to say it was Tuesday. It was either Tuesday or Wednesday. It's been a while. It was Tuesday. I think it was. It's been a wild week. But so and I asked him, I said, what goes into that decision making? Well, we reached a consensus. Well, I reach a consensus every night when I go to dinner, right? Yeah. So like, I pull myself and I try to figure that out, and like, you reached a consensus, and the way that he explained it was like he could have gone in and essentially it was him and Morgan O'Brien, who was a former CEO of Peoples, and Peoples has pumped a lot of money into the basketball program. Morgan's a big basketball guy, and hey, deservedly so. Everybody likes themselves a little Andy Toole, but and hey, that team, the program has deserved it over the years. But essentially, they went around the room and said, hey, do you agree with this? Do you support this? And that's the way that he has made it to believe. And then he followed that up with saying it's essentially, for lack of a better term, a straw poll. And I'm like, okay, so now it's starting to, there's a lot more to the story that we're still trying to figure this out and sort through, because there's way more that we don't know yet.
So we know for sure that there was no vote. We know for sure that this was a 2-person decision or consensus. We know for sure that the hockey team or any of the coaches right now can't speak about it. Is that correct as well?
Yes, as far as I'm aware, yes.
Okay.
What happens? I'm not trying to be a smart ass, but what happens if they speak out against it? Like, what is there? They lose their scholarship, or?
Well, and he didn't even have a grasp on the scholarships at hand when he talked. But as far as I think Derek Schooley and Paul Colantino are concerned, they are contractually obligated to the university until I want to say either June 31st or July 31st.
Okay.
So that's obviously a conflict of interest. I get it. Now Derek did make the rounds on talk radio last week, and I'm sure he's going to speak out here eventually. And for those of you that don't know Derek, he's a great individual, and so is Paul in my interactions with both of them. But yeah, so the players, I think it's a compliance issue as far as why they're not allowed to talk. And also they're trying to market themselves now because they don't have a team to play for. They don't have programs to play for. So they're trying to make themselves look better. And this is very late in the process. I mean, we all know what the transfer portal has done to college athletics, and that's still the same thing in college hockey. So these guys are late in the process trying to find homes to play and continue their careers. And I don't think they want to jeopardize that at this point.
So it's safe to say then that this was pretty much a strictly financial decision?
I guess, right? I mean, he said that they're saving about $1 million annually between the two programs in his press conference. And I mean, $1 million for university that's fundraised.
Not that. I mean,
$100 million is not that big of a deal.
Right.
But to me, it seems like they don't want the program there. That's the census that I'm getting, and I don't know why.
That would be my question, Jarrod, and I know you don't have that answer, but that would be, just looking at this logically, the next closest Division I hockey team to them is what? Probably I'm not great with geography, but it would be Penn State.
It would either be Penn State or Mercier. So I think they're probably equidistant. One's just north and the other one's
about 2 hours
apart.
So they've got Western Pennsylvania and most of Eastern Ohio on lockdown. They've got this whole region on lockdown as far as college hockey goes. I know for me, the only reason why, just as a hockey fan, the only reason why I paid any attention to RMU was for their ice hockey team.
Right. Yeah.
They've brought the Frozen Four to Pittsburgh, which has been fantastic. If you haven't had a chance to go see that, I would say just wait until it comes around next time, but we don't know if there's going to be a next time. And it's a great time. It's a great atmosphere. So I don't understand why a university wouldn't, and they've been successful. It's not like they haven't, it's not like they've been 0 whatever for the last couple of years. I mean, they've been a good hockey team. They've made some, some conference playoffs appearances. They've done decently.
Well, Howard said that there was a lack of ticket sales, but what I've read on Twitter, that seems to be getting like an argumentative, because a lot of people were saying that there were tons of people were showing up to games. So what say you?
Yeah, I mean, I've been to several games. I haven't been over there in a couple of years, but I mean, the biggest thing is Neville Island is a fun place. Like the Island Sports Center is a fun place to watch a hockey game. And in just talking with people that have been associated with the program, it's they just modernized the locker rooms on both sides. The coaches have better offices now. The playing surface itself isn't bad. It holds what, 1,000 people?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's very minimal compared to some of the other places that host games around the conferences, around anywhere. And okay, then fill it up. But a lot of times when I was a student at RMU, now this is back in 2013, you got in for free. So a lot of times early in the infancy of the program, you're getting in for free to go to these games. And he made the argument that it's essentially what, an 11.5-minute drive to the Island Sports Center from campus, which, if you're ever driving to Coriopolis, you're going to hit at least 3 or 4 traffic lights. So it's kind of like a 20-minute drive, but it's not out of the realm of a drivable situation. I mean, yeah, it's not on campus, but it's still not a bad drive either. I mean, they've never really promoted the program the way that it should have been promoted. But again, it's just, do you want this team here?
Well, so I'm reading today on Trib Live, Penguins are making efforts to salvage Robert Morris hockey. There's a lot of petitions going around right now. Murray Gunty on Twitter put out an open letter to RMU hockey about trying to save it. My question at this point is, I mean, considering what's taking place, is it even worth saving? And I don't mean that disparagingly against the hockey team, because I'm very much in favor of RMU hockey staying in place. I think I got to be honest. I'm a Notre Dame fan, but obviously I'm not going to Notre Dame fans living in South Bend, living in Pittsburgh. RMU hockey was the only reason why I would even care about college hockey locally, and it was actually, to me, gaining momentum. But my argument against saving the program would be, how do we know that Chris Howard's even going to do anything, even if people give him the money to save the program? And if I'm a player, why would I want to stay?
No, and that's a really good point, right? They're the black sheep of the university right now, because it's clear that nobody wants them. I feel like we're taking a dog to the pound or something. And that's they can raise the money. Like, they've raised $500,000 in pledges alone over Memorial Day weekend, over holiday weekend, between alums, private donations, and big time donors. Like, it's not that this team wasn't supported. It's had plenty of donors and plenty of big name donors too. And you mentioned it, the relationship with the Penguins. That's, I think, the second layer of all of this. You have a relationship with a professional organization in your city, and you don't communicate with them that you're cutting the program that you have this relationship with. Obviously, they partner to host the Frozen Four. They host a multitude of different college hockey tournaments, both in Cranberry at the UPMC complex and at the Paint Can at PPG Paints Arena. So that's the second layer of all this. You have the vote, or lack thereof, and then you have the lack of communication to the Penguins. That, to me, that's a huge red flag.
So where's it go? Where do you see it going from here? Obviously, we have to wait. You said that it was either June 31st or July 31st where the contractual things start to loosen up. So what are we waiting for? I mean, what's the next shoe to drop, I guess?
It's just finding out more information. I think the biggest thing is finding out what went into the decision outside of the consensus. I mean, we talk about costs, and to me, that's small potatoes. And you talk about the facility upgrades. They can play. If you just kind of nickel and dime, they can play. And what the players said in their Zoom, we don't care how great the facility is. We just want to play. So yeah, having a nice, shiny, sparkly facility is great. It's awesome. Obviously, the basketball team has that. But hockey, listen, they're grinders. They'll play wherever, whenever, and that's what we saw when they met with Chris Howard, and then he abruptly left after about 45 minutes.
I had a RMU the other day when the story broke. I had a lot of people that I follow on Twitter that RMU alums. They were mentioning that, I don't know if it was Howard or someone else involved, definitely openly kind of has an anti-hockey stance, and they're very pro basketball. Is that what we're getting here? Is they just don't want to support the hockey program because they don't care about hockey? Like, even if it was a profitable, which I hate that argument because it's collegiate sports. Like your average lacrosse team and your average, aren't going to be, the basketball and football are the only two sports that are really ever going to be profitable. And I think sometimes even the basketball programs aren't that profitable at certain schools. So to me, that argument is just, it comes down to maybe we just don't want to support hockey anymore because we don't care about it. Did you get any of that? I
think that's fair. I think that's definitely fair. I don't know, and they're never going to come out and say that. If they did, then sure. But I think it's crazy to me in college athletics that they lump scholarships and everything in, because those teams have probably between 24 and 26 people on their rosters. Not everybody is at a full scholarship, right?
Partial scholarships, and
a lot of them get academic aid, because guess what? The more academic aid you get, the more athletic scholarships you can give away. So say you have a stud, but she's also got a 3.9 GPA on the women's hockey team. So academically, she's getting taken care of. You can divvy up that scholarship and spread that out. Now, obviously, you're going to get walk-ons, but you mentioned it. It doesn't make the money that football and basketball does. As great as the notoriety and as great as college hockey really is, because if you have the opportunity to watch it, it is an excellent sport, both on the men's and women's side. It doesn't have bye games. It doesn't have the conference backing that, say, the Big Ten has in football. It doesn't have that TV revenue. It doesn't have the NCAA tournament revenue that basketball has. It doesn't have that, hey, we're going to take our football team down to West Virginia, probably get our butts whooped, but we're going to make $1 million or $500,000 in the process. But they don't have that option because that's just not how the economics of college hockey are. And RMU is a nationally recognized team, a nationally ranked team. So, of course, listen, Penn State doesn't want to play them. It's a lose-lose for Penn State. It's great for the state of Pennsylvania. Right. And that's why they only played at Console. Penn State's only been to Neville Island once since their program was founded, and had Terry Pagula and Kim Pagula blow boatloads of millions of dollars back at the Brinks Truck to build the arena and the program.
So then what does this say? I mean, like, I think this is a very short-sighted thing for RMU and Chris Howard and Morgan O'Brien, because to me, this says a lot about the athletic department.
Overall, yeah.
If it's a situation, let's say it's a situation of funding, what's the next sport to go then? And as an athlete, if I'm looking at going to RMU and I'm not a football player or a basketball player, I'm going to say, okay, well, do I really want to go to this school? Because look at what they just did to a Division I hockey program. Yeah. What are they going to do? Like, okay, if my sport doesn't really, satisfy them or do whatever they wanted to do, like, is it going to be gone next?
No, and I think that's a really good point, because why would, at this point, the university has to be in damage control as far as that goes.
Yeah,
they cut the track and hockey, or the track and the cross country teams before, and they just brought them back. Literally, I think they're coming back in the fall. They announced it, I think, last year. Obviously, track and cross country, or however they did it, I don't have the numbers in front of me. It's significantly cheaper to have those programs than a hockey team, right? You're not paying for all the equipment, the sticks. You buy some javelins, some shot puts, the pole vault pits, and stuff that they should have already had, because they had a hockey team, or not hockey team, but I had a track and field program. But they do their meets and they do all this at the island too. So now, granted, I'm not going to go out of my way to watch a track meet, but they're not going to have a lot of fans there either. So, I mean, it's what is the end game for Robert Morris? And the biggest thing is, how do you recruit guys there? Because you're right. Who is next? What happens next?
Is there, is there a realistic chance, and if you want to put a percentage on it, that is there any chance this can be salvaged and that they end up bringing the team back?
If the university wants it to.
That's all it comes down to, is basically if Chris Howard,
me, yeah. The way that it seems, I mean, the money that I've seen, I mean, obviously the GoFundMe, they've had 500,000. I'm not sure what it's at now. The Penguins are offering their support.
Yep.
The Youngstown Phantoms owner is in there. Like, that's, I mean, I think the financial backing is there if they're open to answering those questions and saying, hey, what do we need to do to salvage this? And I think if they want it to happen, they can make it happen.
Yeah, because I mean, the thing is, I mean, we're a pretty hockey centric show here. Hockey's our main thing that we cover. But the thing about, like Western Pennsylvania is a hotbed for hockey with the Penguins. Like I play deck hockey, and I'll tell you that I've literally played in front of full stands at deck hockey. So if people are willing to go and watch deck hockey, they're willing to go watch a nationally ranked RMU team. And to me, I think RMU's not looking at the overall picture. Yes, you might take a drop in profit, God forbid, with your, because I'm sure they're still not losing money even with fully supporting the program. But the thing is, if you have a nationally ranked program like that, that is going to open up other avenues, like people that listen, I gotta be honest, RMU was never even on my radar growing up. Like, and then all of a sudden I was like, hey, I want to go check out this hockey team. They're nationally ranked. That does happen, and it appeals to people that maybe not would have looked at the university elsewise. So I think that they just have a very short-sighted approach about this whole thing. And I think there's probably going to be a regret. And I can't even imagine how long it's going to take to come back from this PR nightmare.
Oh, and that's the way that they've handled it. And listen, I know it's not an easy job to be in PR at this day and age, but I don't know that they could have handled it any worse. I mean, it took them 6 days, essentially 5 or 6 days, to just talk about it, to just have Dr. Howard available. And like I mentioned in my introduction, like they lumped this in with saying they raised $100 million.
But
yeah, we don't really have the money, and we want to focus on diversity and inclusion. And I don't know if you've ever looked at a men's or women's ice hockey roster. Nothing like to me explains diversity and inclusion like people from Saskatchewan playing in Moon Township.
It is literally a melting pot on
Finland.
ice. Yeah.
Like what is the diversity and inclusion? What is that issue? And that's just the nationality aspect. That's where these people are from. I mean, you're getting people to your university from all over the country and all over the world. Basketball doesn't do that. Women's basketball probably does a little bit more than men. But football, you're getting people that play football. You're getting people from Florida at the furthest away. Hockey, though, you're going to Alberta, you're going to Quebec, you're going to Finland. Like, there are a lot of people from a lot of different places. To me, that's pretty diverse, because diversity and inclusion to me is more than just color.
Yeah. And I mean, we've talked about this on the podcast quite a few times. We're both from lower income neighborhoods where it's hard to get into ice hockey,
Very.
And I think that if you want to really be about diversity and inclusion, having a Division I ice hockey program in the city of Pittsburgh, where there are a lot of low income neighborhoods, having these kids see that, oh man, I can go to college and play this sport.
Mm-hmm.
Like it could be something that I can do, especially if you're partnering up with the Penguins. Like, I think that screams diversity and inclusion. To me, I don't understand that.
Yeah, and you drive through Coriopolis, and this is no disrespect to Coriopolis, but that part that you would drive through to get to the island isn't the greatest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just isn't. So yeah, you have a Division I hockey team, and not only that, but you look at football. Well, RMU football is never going to surpass Pitt football or even Duquesne football, I don't think, in Pittsburgh. You look at Pitt hoops and you look at Duquesne hoops, and Robert Morris and Duquesne are probably pretty on par as far as hoops go, but I don't think that they're ever going to be like far and above Dayton, or not Dayton, but Duquesne. I'm sorry. And this is your school. This is your sport. This is what you have over everybody else in the city, and this side of the state. I mean, you have to go to Mercyhurst up north near Erie to do that. And obviously Penn State's got Central PA on lock. But I mean, this is your baby. This is what makes RMU unique compared to every other school. And they mentioned about schools their size and their enrollment and whatever. But I think that's just a cop out, to be perfectly honest.
This is a hard question to ask, and I guess I got to be careful how I ask it, because now we're like, this is kind of getting touchy. Do you think what you just said, and having a predominantly rich white sport, was not the look they're going for, or do you really don't think that has anything to do with it?
I know that I've seen some things floating around about something like that. I would hope that that's not the case, because like I said, diversity and inclusion is way more than just the color of somebody's skin or their character. Right. I mean, those hockey locker rooms, any locker room is a diverse place, no matter what the sport is.
And it's not just the men either; it's the women too. So
right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's every sport, but yeah, I would hope that that's not the case. And if it is, shame on the people that are involved. I have seen stuff floating around, and I had something sent to me earlier about some of the things that were said by certain people involved about race and certain things like that. But if that is, that's so tough to handle, and that's just such a shame.
And the reason why I bring it up is because I feel like right now in the hockey world, I don't think it's just right now. I think it's always been this way with hockey. Like, it's kind of one of those things where everybody knows that if you're just looking from a racial standpoint, hockey is not the most diverse sport there is. And it's almost like we've just chosen to ignore that as a community, and we need to deal with that. And I think that, like, if it is something to do with that with RMU, I think this is a perfect time for, in this part of the country, in Western PA, I think it's a perfect time for us to sit down and have that conversation about why. I mean, we know that it's an expensive sport to play. We know that it's, it's kind of, a sport that's a little bit born out of privilege, and how I think this forces us, I think a situation like this forces us to examine all of these things and why it shouldn't be that way. And again, I just go back to, a Division I school that, people are going to for basketball and football predominantly. You have a hockey team, and you can show kids in this area that, hey, there's more than just the NHL. Man, I think they're missing a golden opportunity to start breaking down some barriers in the hockey world that absolutely 100% need to be broken down. And I just think that this is so short-sighted on so many levels that it just really doesn't make any sense to me, Jarrod.
No, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I think Derek Schooley said it on the Fan. He said if somebody he talked to said, if you would have asked me the 5 programs that would have been in danger of getting cut, neither of these 2 programs would have been on that radar or anywhere close. They're 2 successful programs. They are your they're perennial nationally ranked. Like, you don't get that in a lot of other sports. Now, granted, a lot of the other sports at RMU are starting to build up to that, but you're right. I think it is very short-sighted. I think it's a shame because, we talk about college hockey all the time. We talk about breaking down those barriers. Like, there are a lot of different avenues that you can go about this, both on the ice, off the ice, both in where people are coming from and who they are and what they're about. And even, probably to an extent for both programs and for all the other sports too, is sexuality too. Mm-hmm. Because I think that's a big factor in locker rooms as well.
But yeah, Jarrod, like I said, I feel like they're missing an opportunity with the diversity and inclusion because, if we're talking about breaking down barriers in hockey, and I just spent a couple minutes talking about that, and we all know that hockey needs to find a way to break down barriers. So, like, I don't think there's no honest person that sees the game of hockey and says, oh, there's not some kind of problem there.
It's not just race either. Like,
it's not.
Where I grew up, like, literally it was $2,000 a season to play ice hockey because our it wasn't technically sponsored by the school, so you had to pay out of pocket.
It was the same for me, and my parents couldn't afford to buy me hockey equipment. They couldn't do it. So
I didn't even cover the equipment either.
Yeah, I didn't get to play because my family couldn't afford it. So we played street hockey. It was just that's how it was, I tell stories about how my first set of goalie equipment was, some old car seats that we, cut the foam out of and put duct tape around them. That was my goalie pads when I was 6 years old. Like, it's an expensive game to play, and we have to admit that as hockey fans. And again, if we don't, we're being disingenuous. And I just think having a Division I program in the community would help with that.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, we all have those stories where we couldn't afford it. And again, this goes back to the partnership with the Penguins. You want to talk about diversity and inclusion? Sidney Crosby has the Learn to Skate program where he donates so much of this money. And Neville Island, or at the Island Sports Center, they have all of those little kids clinics and classes that you see RMU's logo, you see the Patriot head, you see Rod Moore's face all over the place. And that is perfect marketing, number one. But it's those kids getting that opportunity to play. And we're seeing a Pittsburgh theme here. And you look at like Furman and Collins South a couple of years ago. They grew up in Pittsburgh. So you're getting people in Pittsburgh engaged in the game. And you want to talk, we can talk about even the cost, but also you take a look at the diversity side again when talking about sexuality, because there are certain things that, you know, are taboo in locker rooms and taboo all over the place. But the Penguins are another one there. Brian Burke is leading that charge in the NHL's level. Like that's those are things that you can just build on that make it diverse, and inclusion is a big thing. And like I said, it's more than just color. It really is.
Well, yeah, and then it's like, okay, I get it. You know, we live in a world where like PR is everything. Even though if this is a PR thing with RMU, you did not pass the test. You failed the PR test. But like, you know, this thing's like, oh well, I get it. Hockey is predominantly white, and it is changing. I think the LA Kings this year, they had the first ever shift where all 3 forwards were people of color. Like that's a monumental thing.
Yeah.
The way to make hockey more inclusive to all walks of life is to not cut the programs. Because if I'm a minority, or if I'm a female, or if I'm a lower income person, I'm going, well, that's one less place for me to play hockey. Like in Pittsburgh, where there is no other Division I hockey programs. So you literally did the opposite. This is textbook overthinking, where, okay, we get it. This program, it's not profitable. Not only that, it's predominantly white, and I get that. But again, you're not factoring in other nationalities play hockey. Like hockey is literally besides soccer, the melting pot of sports. And then you cut a goddamn women's program. So now you literally did the opposite of what you were doing, because now all these women who got scholarships or partial scholarships playing a sport they love have no place to play.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, you look at baseball, right? Baseball is a predominantly white sport. They're working on baseball in the inner cities with their RBI program. This is something that shouldn't be an issue. And I know that there are articles going out there that we've seen and that we've referenced that feature certain people involved in this talking about being a white area and being predominantly white.
Hire me. I would have been like, listen, how about this? If you're a good hockey player and you're a minority, we will give you a full ride scholarship to RMU. Like literally, you could have did anything like that. The opposite is you literally took those chances away.
Yeah, and that's the problem. You're taking. I think that's the thing to latch on to here. You're taking opportunities away, and at the end of the day, do we need to do better jobs everywhere? You know, not just the hockey world. Do we need to do a better job of being inclusive in our communities and being more diverse in our communities? Absolutely. Yes. I mean, if you're going to be somebody that's going to deny that kind of thing, then I don't really have the time to explain why you're wrong. But taking opportunities away and taking exposure away does the opposite. You know, you learn by being exposed to things. You learn by seeing them firsthand. And when you take that away from people, you lose the opportunity to share something with somebody. Yeah. And again, I'm not talking about just race here. I'm talking about socioeconomic, status. I'm talking about gender. I'm talking about sexuality. I think in the last 3 or 4 years, hockey has done a great job of bridging some of these gaps. I mean, one of my favorite follows on Twitter in the hockey community right now is Black Girl Hockey Club, because of everything that they've done for the LGBT community, the Black community in the game. I mean, they're doing a lot of great things. And I just think that, you know, I get it. We're looking at this in the vacuum of hockey fans, you know, that like, oh, you've hurt our sport. And we've got to kind of zoom out for a second and look at this from a community standpoint and say, even from the community, I don't think it did any good outside of the hockey bubble.
And that's the other thing too, is in the fall, right? Last year we had Black Lives Matter, right? We had a lot of racially infused initiatives, and deservedly so, right? Everybody's you can say what you want on that. But RMU created a program called the Unite campaign. I believe it was Michaela Boyle, if I'm not mistaken, who spoke up in the players' meeting, where with Dr. Howard, that as one of the people that came up with that, right? The Student Athletic Advisory Committee, or how the SAC, and you're going against everything that you talk about in your branding when you're this is going to be a fractured athletic program, because now people are going to be watching their backs. Coaches are going to be watching their backs. It's great that you have a guy like Derek Schooley and Paul Colantino have been there for. Paul's been there about almost a decade. Derek's been there since day one, and Andy Toole has been there for a while. So it's great that you're getting these guys and you're keeping them. But now, what's making somebody stay? Why is this? You're turning this now into a stepping stone? Because why would you want to stay now?
Yeah, and that's the thing that to circle back to what one of the things we started with is I just don't see how any student athlete would sit there and feel comfortable if they don't play basketball or football, and that at the end of the day is bad for the university. It's bad for the area, because RMU's there's a lot of people that are invested heavily into RMU, whether they're alum, whether they grew up in the area, whether they know people that are, that go to that school or are playing sports at that school. It's a big part of the community in Western PA. And I think that this just gives it a big black eye. And that's a shame. It really is. Like, it's a sad thing to see.
Right. And you look at it in the grand scheme of things, how many people from Saskatchewan know what Robert Morris University would be if it wasn't for their hockey programs? Mm-hmm. How many people from California or Miami, Florida would know Robert Morris had a hockey team, let alone a university? When I was at school at RMU, President DeLoma, who is now at Ryder, who was the president prior to Dr. Howard, always talked about athletics being the front porch to a university. And it's right. I mean, you look at a place, and because I cover Penn State, so let's look at a place like Penn State. Football, obviously, not the same situation that we're doing here. Football brings in millions and millions of dollars in both revenue and donations that help subsidize the rest of the athletics program. Basketball and football at RMU help with that, with their buy games and their tournament money and other things of that nature. But you look at Penn State, you look at the wrestling program. Penn State's wrestling program is top notch. It's the premier outside of maybe Iowa. Those are the two premier entities in college wrestling, and they barely make money. So you're not running these programs for a profit. I mean, at one point, Robert Morris was a not-for-profit university, but you're not running these programs for profit. You're running them for opportunities. You're running them to build that enrollment at that university that's so been lacking over the course of the last few years. So you're doing, because listen, if it wasn't for Robert Morris playing in the NCAA hockey or NCAA basketball tournament, I probably wouldn't have known exactly what they were all about if I didn't see that and be like, oh, I'm going to check them out. Now, I also had a good buddy of mine that ran track there, and I was like, I'll apply, and it worked out. Here we are. But so that's the free PR that you get, right? You're running these athletic teams. You see Derek Schooley's quote against Minnesota, I think it was, or whoever they played when they made it to the tournament a couple of years ago, and it made me want to run through a wall, not just as a fan, but as a human too, because it's a blue collar mentality, and that's what they did at the Island. It's a blue collar rink. It's you want to talk about the old barn as far as hockey goes. That's the Island Sports Center. That's their arena, and that's what makes it so unique. But you've also got to put some money into the program to make it good too. You got to promote it if you really want it to be great.
Absolutely. And this is one of those things I feel like we could just keep going and going, because it's baffling. Like, it really is. Like, and the thing of it is we can keep going and going because there aren't any real answers yet. There's very little information. And that's why I give you so much credit, Jarrod. Whatever information was there to grab, you found a way to get it. And again, I can't recommend reading the article on DKPittsburghSports.com. Getting caught up with this, and then just go on Twitter, follow Jarrod, go on Twitter, follow DK, because they've both really been at this, and they're not stopping. Like, that's
what we had Dejan scheduled to be on this week, and Dejan was like, "Nope, to have Jarrod on, he deserves it." And he was like, he has more information than I do. He was like, "I'll come on another time," and I was like, I'll reach straight out to him. So we appreciate. I mean, you did a great job, and I'm sure you'll continue to keep up to date. And if there is more news, then we would definitely like to have you back on again too.
No, absolutely, and like both DK and I have done now. Obviously, he's the columnist aspect of it. I'm the reporter, so I'm giving you the news as soon as I get it. So. And putting it into words and trying to figure out why this is happening, what's going on, and what's next. I mean, the Penguins are now involved. You've got multiple people involved. It's finding out, well, is Dr. Howard or is President Howard listening to these?
Yeah, he's going to give in.
Because, I mean, they have not handled it very well at all. And listen, nobody, you talk about scandals all the time. You talk about this, that. It's not easy to deal with stuff like this. And it was the perfect news time. There's nobody on campus. It's a holiday weekend. You're not expecting it to get out. You're not expecting it to be a big deal. And then, like we talked about initially, Kevin Colbert resigns, and the reason why he resigns from the board of trustees. And when you have a guy of that caliber, that character, that's when the red flags really start. The press release, okay, if they would have come out and said, we don't have the money, okay. I mean, but not if they. Like you can blame COVID, you can blame a multitude of other issues, but you can't say that what they did in $100 million fundraising announcement.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So there's a lot that needs to be uncovered, and with DK Pittsburgh Sports, we're going to do everything we can to uncover it and put the ball in their court to see what happens and make it what it is.
Yeah, and like I said, we'll continue to keep up with you as well, and we'll be following it. You could follow Jarrod. It is J Prugar 26, right?
Yep.
So that's JPRUGAR 26 on Twitter. Obviously, follow DK. Everybody knows DK. Follow their news site, DK Pittsburgh Sports. Jarrod, again, we appreciate you coming on, and we know that we know some of this conversation got a little heavy. We generally like to keep it to like the light side of sports, but there were things said. There are things that have been said in other articles that raise questions, and we got to deal with them. And I think it's time that the hockey community, just being bluntly as a hockey fan, it's time that the hockey community starts dealing with these tough decisions or tough questions and hard conversations rather than running for them and just pretending that they don't exist. And so sometimes that might get people angry. Sometimes that might get people upset, but we've got to have the conversation. So Jarrod, again, we appreciate you coming on. We're going to take a quick break, and then Chad and I will be back to talk about the Mark Scheifele hit, get into some Dwayne Haskins talk. I've got an answer to Chad's question, who's the power forward that has skill that the Penguins can target. So we've got a little bit more coming on the other side of this break. Again, this has been the 412 Sports Talk podcast, brought to you by MCM Studios. Hey, 412 Sports Talk family, what's going on? It's your guy, Eddie P. I'm sitting in MCM Studios right now with our sponsor, my man Mike Hitt. Mike, what's going on, brother?
What's up, bro? 412 Sports Talk Podcast, Pittsburgh, PA. What is up?
What we're doing is, we're a local podcast. We talk Pittsburgh sports. We're completely supported by people that are either from Pittsburgh or have ties to Pittsburgh. And even our sponsor, MCM Studios, is over in Allentown, in the heart of the city of Pittsburgh. But I wanted to bring you into the studio so you could see what Mike's got going on, and you can see a little bit of, what happens behind the scenes here at MCM Studios. Mm-hmm. So, Mike, what are you working on right now, man?
I'm working with always a stable of talented artists, whether they're from Pittsburgh, they come to Pittsburgh to come to MCM Studios, they move here from out of town, whatever the case may be, a young, old, guy, girl, pop, rock, reggae, R&B, trap music. I just work with a lot of guys that need the love and the attention and the direction in order to get their sound and their business together and their whole artistry, in a position that is the quality and the vision that they were looking for. I kind of just help them bring all that together. So they're like, oh, or I would have been lost for the next 3 years if you wouldn't have said, hey, go do this, or sing your song like this, or write a song like this, or this is a good look for you as an artist. That's really what MCM Studios does, and what I have going on is just continually helping artists. If they get famous, they get famous. If they don't, they don't. But just helping them along on this artistic journey so they can look back, and it felt like it was worth it.
Yes. I know how much it means to be a musician and need that backup. And I'll be honest with you, Mike has been a big part of the business side of 412 Sports Talk and how much we've grown as a business too, helping us with the legal side of things, giving us all the tips that he's learned in 10, 11 years of business. So, like I said, I just wanted to get you guys to take a look at the studio, hear it from Mike himself, and just get a little bit of the behind the scenes of one of our sponsors, our first sponsor, MCM Studios. And you can check them out at 412mcmstudios.com. You can check them out on Facebook at MCM Studios Pittsburgh. Check Mike out on Twitter at Mike Hitman with 2 T's. Let's build this Pittsburgh community because there's a lot of cool people, a lot of talented people, and a lot of great things going on in the city. Mike, you got anything else to leave them with?
Support the people around you that are doing cool things. If you can see that they're serious and they're dedicated and they're putting the time and they're making the investment in themselves, at least make, at the very minimum, the investment of believing in them. That's what I did for 412 Sports Talk podcast. That's what I do at the studio with the artist. Just look at your life as one big investment, and I really think by doing that, we can all help bring everybody around us up.
So there it is. I hope you guys enjoyed this little mini tour. We'll be back with stuff like this. In the meantime, again, I'm Eddie Provident. For Mad Chad Nolan, for my man Mike Hitt, we'll catch you later.
Peace.
All right, well, welcome back to the 412 Sports Talk podcast, brought to you by MCM Studios and our main man, Mike Hitt. Chad, that was a wild interview for a wild, just a bizarre situation, man. Like, I don't get it.
No, and it's another thing where it was tough for me not to get political because I do think there's a lot of political parts of the story. Again, greed and capitalism versus the greater good.
Yep.
Race and inequality playing a part. It's people say keep politics out of sports. It's sometimes impossible to do that. Again, textbook greed and textbook corporatism, where you have because these colleges now are businesses. They're not schools of learning.
They've been
that way for a long time, for decades now, and it keeps getting worse and worse. And again, they're not looking at the bigger picture, which is, these programs are good. They're for the greater good. You're giving people chances to earn scholarships. You're giving people, like, I know when I played sports in high school, that's when my grades were the best because you're motivated. Like, I can't play this unless, and again, you're talking about inclusion, like that thing about, it's mostly white people playing hockey. Well, for one thing, you have a whole female team, so you just killed women's hockey in Division I college hockey in Pittsburgh, which is going to be a terrible PR thing for you. That's not very inclusive to cut a women's program. That's not very inclusive. You're doing the opposite. But also, it's not just a race, it's income. Maybe someone from Pittsburgh is, a god when it comes to hockey, and they're going to be able to earn a scholarship to RMU hockey. That's still being inclusive, even if they're white. I hate to tell you that.
Yeah, and like, you've got people from different countries that come here to play. And
some
just a lot of it.
Poor schmuck from the Czech Republic, earning a scholarship in America.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think the diversity in hockey conversation is a whole different conversation. I know we touched on it a little bit in this, but I feel like that's its own, that's its own episode in itself. And there's, probably more people that we need to involve in that conversation than just you and I and Jarrod. But I mean, it's, again, I said it when I asked the question. It's a touchy, very sensitive subject, and you want to deal with it in a respectful way. You want to deal with it in a way that, that doesn't do any harm but you do want to deal with it. And I think that the hockey community, and I know I've repeated myself, the hockey community has done a very poor job of acknowledging that there's a problem, and a even poorer job of dealing with the problem.
Well,
And removing a hockey team from a camp, from a university, is not it doesn't do anything to help that's where I sit on it. That's and that's kind of where I'm at.
Hockey culture, and we're going to transition that right into what we're going to talk about next, is there's so many problems with hockey culture, and the big thing is the continued support of what I would consider non-needed violence.
Yeah.
With these hits, the cavemen that gatekeep hockey, where it's like last night, for those of you unaware, Mark Sheffley, who is a fantastically underrated player, he's
and I don't think he's a dirty guy.
No, he's I'd say one of the 15 best centers in the league. He's been vastly underrated. But last night, I mean, you watched a clip. He started his strides in the other zone, 200 feet, full stride, comes and crushes Jack Evans from the Canadiens, who had his head down and was trying to score an empty net goal, I believe. And the thing about hitting in hockey, people love their hits. I love these big hits. We love them. I always go, was the hit needed? Because I played hockey. The only reason you would ever really want to hit somebody would be to remove them from the puck. They have the puck, and you're trying to remove them from the puck to gain possession of said puck. It's really that simple. I know you go, you want to finish your checks to wear them down. A lot of times I've coached hockey. That's really unnecessary, because what happens is you go and you try to finish your check on somebody, and now that person's in front of you, and you've literally taken yourself out of the play because you want to go finish your check. It's really a stupid thing that I just wish would leave hockey. But last night, Mike Commodore just put out this big thing. I mean, of course you would, because you were a goon defending Sheffley. Oh, Jack Evans needs to keep his head up. Bro, there was no need to hit him like that.
Let's break the play down real quick. And we don't have the video in front of us, but let's break the play down. So Jack Evans is coming around the net. He has the puck on his stick, and he's in the process of putting it in the net. Everybody in that arena knows that puck is going in the net. Like, everybody knows that it's a 5-3 game now. Everybody knows he's scoring. It's an empty net, and he's got a wraparound. So in that instant, Mark Scheifele, who is coming in full speed, I assume, to not hit Jack Evans, to make a play on the puck. But at some point in time, he changes his mind. Now, whether it was a snap decision, because like I said, I don't think Mark Scheifele is a dirty player. He's never had this kind of history before. I think it was a heat of the moment, really bad, stupid play. But what he did was he decided to change his mentality from I'm going to stop the puck from getting into the net to I'm going to punish Jack Evans. And you could see on his face, he immediately knew he made a mistake. Like, Scheifele knew. Like, he had the face of a dude who was like, I just effed up bad. Like, he knew right away. So the hit, to me, wasn't needed because everybody knew Evans was going to score. It doesn't do anything for the play. It's just dangerous. Like you said, he was striding down full speed from the other end of the ice.
And he made no play on the puck. He made no play on the puck. And he... you could argue that the principal point of contact was the head. So there's so many things wrong with this hit that just make it so that I don't even know what words to use here. It's just this is the type of thing that we need to take out of the game, and you've got people defending it. And again, I'm not saying that Mark Scheifele is a dirty player, but I'm saying that he deserves to be suspended. Well,
he deserves, everybody has one of those moments. Like, you've had those moments. I've had those moments where, we lose our mind for a second. Now, thankfully, I've never lost my mind and hurt somebody like that. But when you're on the ice playing NHL hockey, the potential's there. Okay? So you have to discipline it. The only way to get it out of the game is to discipline it, and discipline it heavily. But they're not going to. I guarantee you the NHL is going to come back on this and say, well, Scheifele doesn't have a history. It was charging, but it wasn't predatory or anything like that. And that's what they're going to go.
And listen,
he's going to get a game, and it's going to be whatever.
So we're talking about hockey culture, and we just talked about how race does unfortunately play a factor in it. every time a hockey player like Sheffley does something like this, the first thing that I see is guys go, well, he's a good guy. What does that have to do with anything? Like, we're not saying that. That's You know what that is? That's deflection and a straw man argument.
And what happens is you got people like us that we have to qualify our statements. I'm not saying that he's a dirty player.
And that's
I'm saying he made a dirty play.
But it's funny because, like, again, unfortunately getting political, if I saw like an NBA player, right? If an NBA player pushed somebody, like did a really hard push and injured somebody and they were black, right away I would see the same people that make these comments go, oh, thug, animal, suspend him.
I'll throw this one at you. What if Russell Westbrook goes into the stands the other night after the dude threw popcorn on him? What happens then?
Right. And in hockey culture, there is a race overtone. I don't care
Mike
what anybody
Milbury can go
says.
in and beat somebody with a shoe.
100%. It's good old boys doing good old boy things. There is 100%. And if you disagree, it's because you don't want to admit it because you're probably sitting there with your white
this
belt
is
going,
when I said that these are the conversations that as hockey fans we have to have. These are the conversations I'm talking about. We can't sit here and pretend it doesn't exist. I'll give you another example, Chad, and I'm prefacing this example with I don't for a second think that this dude should not have been suspended. But look at Nazem Kadri.
Mm-hmm.
Nazem Kadri got 8 games for a terrible hit, okay, against the St. Louis Blues. He got, was it 3 or 6 games 2 seasons ago when he was with the Maple Leafs. And the year before that, he got a couple of games. So Nazem Kadri continues to get suspended for these bad hits.
Mm-hmm.
But Tom Wilson gets a $5,000 fine. And, Scheifele is probably going to get a game or 2. And I realize Scheifele doesn't have a history, and that matters in player safety in the NHL, which I think is dumb. But why is Nazem Kadri being treated the right way? Now, I will say that, the right way, but Scheifele and Wilson and guys like that can get away with it. And they don't get the book thrown at them.
Tom Wilson's the biggest to me, example of if you wanted to say of any kind of privilege, it's definitely him because he is a violent, dirty player. There is
he married to someone in Paros's family or something? Because it's crazy, man.
Yeah, but no, the hockey it's tough. These hockey culture, it's gonna take such a long time to progress. You got people that literally are fighting analytics. Because again, I think it's scary to them that they might, a lot of people don't want to admit that they don't know everything. Oh, my eye test is good enough. No, it's not, bro. You watch a TV broadcast. Yeah. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. You're watching a TV broadcast drinking Iron City Light. Like, I don't give a shit what your eye test is telling me about hockey. It says
you've got someone like Danny Shirey Irving, who will sit there for every game and break down plays and explain them in a way that an idiot like me can understand. And then you've got guys like Pierre Maguire that, the Oilers and the Toronto Maple Leafs were built on analytics, and
which is a lie. They're both a lie, by the way. The Oilers are
not
on
very
public
much not
saying that they're not analytics.
They had Chris Russell. They signed Milan Lucic to a huge deal. They outside of Draisaitl and McDavid, who did they really have?
And they were gifted those players. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, Anyways, it's another one we can spend a long time on. I know you want to get into Dwayne Haskins, but while we're on the hockey topic, on the live stream that you did for our channel, one of the questions you threw out there is, okay, if you want to get bigger, if you want the Penguins to get bigger and tougher or whatever that means, name some players. And so today I tweeted a cap-friendly scenario, a road to the Penguins keeping skill and getting bigger, and a little tougher, but not in my opinion, not sacrificing skill. Now I'm going to preface this with I know 100% certainty that there is no way in the world Ron Hextall goes this route, because he said that there's not going to be a lot of changes, and this is damn near an overhaul. So the first thing I did was I packaged Mike Matheson with Brian Rust to Minnesota for a pick and Jordan Greenway. Okay. So Jordan Greenway is a 6'6" power forward who loves to play in front of the net, but has kind of been an underachiever for Minnesota because they've had him on the first line, and he's been less than a half a point per game guy. But I think with the Penguins organization, if you pair him with a Jeff Carter and put him down on the third line, it's a perfect situation for a guy like Jordan Greenway. So, and he's young. He has a year left on his deal, but he's young. He's an RFA. So there's number one. Number two, with that money saved, you go and sign Zach Hyman. Zach Hyman is I think he's on the first or second line for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's a free agent this year. He's also a bigger guy. If you want a comparable, he plays a lot like Patrick Hornquist. He's a pest. He's physical. He's in front of the net, but he knows how to play with guys with skill because he's done it with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner and John Tavares and William Nylander, and he's good. He's a very, very good hockey player. Now, Hyman, the downside of Hyman is I have the cap hit on my cap friendly at $4.5 million over 4. I don't think that's going to get it done for Hyman. I really think Hyman's probably going to get $5 or $6 million a year from somebody.
Yeah, he scores too much.
That's kind of a pipe dream. But my point is, if the Penguins can make the salaries work, Zach Hyman would 100% be a guy that I would go after.
I will say, just cut you off real quick. Greenway is definitely a player that I could see them targeting. For one thing, they have a relationship with Bill Guerin, obviously. Yep. I think there's been reports that Greenway has been up and down as far as Minnesota goes. Like he's a very streaky player. Definitely don't think he's a top 6 forward, but
no, I wouldn't be getting him for the top 6. He would be in that slotted perfectly in that third line with Jeff Carter and whoever else is there with. And
I could see Bill Guerin wanting to trade for Rust and then probably extending him.
Exactly.
And yeah, the Penguins would be like, well, yeah, that's fine. Then you gotta do us a favor and take Matheson off.
Exactly.
And Matheson's gonna be a pipe dream to me. He has 5 seasons left of that contract.
And the only way that you get him gone is if you package him with somebody else.
And you might still need to eat salary with that. I like Hyman, but
he's probably going to be too much for the Penguins. And I admit that. Again, this was a pipe dream. This was just a name that, like, there's a guy that fits the bill that if they could somehow make the salary
Greenway's
work,
a good call.
Yeah, Greenway and Hyman, if they could make this. Now, the third one for me is Linus Ullmark. So say you don't get Hyman, right? Say you're able to pull off a deal for somebody like Jordan Greenway where you dump Matheson's salary and you give up Rust in the process. That frees up $8 million in space, a little over $8 million. Now that also that you're taking on, so say it is Jordan Greenway, you take on $2.1 million, but that gives you plenty of room to sign a goalie like Linus Ullmark or was it Grubauer that's going to be a free, or one of the goalies from Colorado is going to be a free agent. There's a handful of goalies that you can go after, but I think Linus Ullmark, who had a really good season statistically in Buffalo, where this year every goalie should have went to die. I think Linus Ullmark is a guy that would be able to light a fire under Tristan Jarry, probably take the starting position, and if nothing else, it gives you a chance to really examine Tristan Jarry and say, okay, prove it to me that you're a real number one goalie, or else we got a guy who is.
Right.
And so I don't think as much as I like DeSmith as a serviceable backup, he's not a guy that's going to challenge Tristan Jarry for the first spot.
Yeah, maybe he should because he was better than him this year.
Right.
But
and I don't doubt that. But like when you're talking, pedigree in the NHL, I think Linus Ullmark has a year or two of good work that he could come in and really be that kind of guy at a manageable price. I don't think he's only making about $2 million this year, so you could get him for probably $3 or $3.5 million, and still only have about 6.5 or 7 tied up in your goalies, and not really, not be in a situation that Vegas is in where they're $12-13 million into 2 goalies. The other name obviously would be the guy that you're on with is Robin Lehner. Even though he just got shelled the other night, I still think Lehner would be a good fit here. I think that he could,
half those goals were power play goals.
Right. So
Yeah.
I did some other filler things like defenseman from Buffalo, from Boston, Mike Riley, and a third liner from Vegas, Matthias Janmark.
Yeah.
Good dudes, decent scorer. Riley's a good defense. I have him on the third pair with Cece. I do think that if the Penguins can get Cece at another good cost, and I mean he's going to be more than the 1.2 he made this year, but if they can get him around 2.2, I would bring Cece back on a year or two deal. I think he was good in our system. I think he played well. There's just a lot of. I think if they can get the Matheson salary off the books, and I honestly, the other one, I would package a couple trades together or a couple picks together to try to get Seattle to take Zucker.
Yeah, Ron Hextall kind of already said that that's probably not going to happen. I think they're going to end up taking Teddy Bluger. I think that's who they'll pick. They've kind of already insinuated that Bluger's probably on his way out.
And the other thing about trading Rust, and again, I like Rust. This is not a dump on Rust. He's the guy with the most value that has 1 year left on his deal that's gonna get priced out of Pittsburgh next year.
Yeah, no.
If you get rid of Rust, that gives you another spot for a forward on the protection list that maybe you can save a Bluger or you can save a Zach Aston Reese.
So I'm definitely on board with moving Zucker out, whether he gets taken by Seattle or not. I think you could still move him because he's still a decent player. But if you're looking to get bigger and faster, there is a free agent that I've been beating the drums for, and that's hometown kid Brandon Saad, who's having he's having an amazing postseason, which kind of scares me because now he might end up getting more money.
But I think he'll be at a lower cost point than Hyman for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
and he's 28, so you're actually getting younger too. He's 6'2", so he's taller, and he's actually a faster skater than Zucker. And he might just want to play. If the price is right, he might want to play for his hometown team that he loved. $5 million right now. He's making $6 million, but I think that you can actually get him lower than that because, again, revenue is the cap's not going up. So I don't think you're going to see outrageous contracts be thrown around here. And they could always go term over value. They could say, listen, 4 to $5.5 million, but we'll give you 5 to 6 years. You're living in Pittsburgh, your hometown team.
Yeah.
I would love to see Brandon Saad on Evgeny Malkin's wing. That would be great.
Yeah. And another dude, again, we're talking Colorado. I'm interested to see what he makes. Me and you originally pinned him at about a $9 million a year guy. I'm looking at his salary now. Gabriel Landeskog is going to be 29, and
it ain't happening.
No, I don't think he's going to make as much as we think. I still put him in the Zach Hyman situation where he's probably going to be priced out of Pittsburgh, but I wouldn't be shocked to see somebody get him for about 6 or 7.
I don't see that. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to I think he's going to get $8 million.
You think so?
Yeah, he's that good. He's a goddamn
he
captain.
He is good.
His team's probably going to win a Stanley Cup. He's a top 20 point getter. If Colorado now he may want to him and McKinnon and Rantanen might have this thing where we're all going to take less money to stay here.
They do the Bergeron
free agency. There's a lot of teams that have a lot of cap space. There's going to be someone. I'd say a minimum $8 million a year.
Yeah,
minimum.
Now, regardless of what we say with all of this stuff, I think Ron Hextall put it best in his media availability. There's not a lot out there of what people are talking about, what they need. There's just not a lot to be had. And so even as much as I had fun with that cap friendly thing today and slapping that together and really digging into some numbers, it's not going to happen. I know that first.
At most,
going to happen. You're going to see a couple of changes. And
goalie.
And
probably not a number one goalie. Realistically, Allmark's probably realistic. Peter Mrazek's another name that I like. I don't think he would cost a lot. And he has really, and again, he's not so you can still say, okay, Tristan, we're going to give you another year, but Peter Mrazek's there. And if you have Mrazek and Casey DeSmith, which honestly, they could have used 3 goalies this year, and you can hide the Smith down in Wilkes-Barre for a while. So I think goalie, like a 1A, 1B goalie is going to happen. Rust, I can see getting traded. Zucker, I can see Zucker, Rust, and Bluger, which actually 3 of your top 12 going out is a pretty big overhaul. And in return, Brandon Saad, Jordan Greenway, maybe they do. Saad and Greenway. Does that make your team better? I think it evens out. I think Greenway. I think Greenway and Saad are, I think Rust is the best player of those four, but I think Rust and Saad are closer, and then Zucker and Greenway. But again, your point is to get bigger. That's what you wanted to do. You wanted to get bigger.
Right, but I don't. You don't want to. Yeah, you don't. I'm with you that. I'm still with you that you don't want to get bigger at the expense of.
And I don't think that does that because Saad's a better athlete than Zucker. So
and I think that Jordan Greenway he's still young. I mean, he's like early 20s. He has the chance in a place like Pittsburgh to really do something. I mean, he was a second round pick, and I remember watching him for Team USA in the World Juniors the year that he was on the team. They won gold. My dad and I were watching it, and we were watching him, and it was like Canada didn't have an answer for Greenway. And I was like, dude, I would love to see this guy as a Penguin in the he ended up getting drafted by Minnesota. I think that there is something there to where if you bring him into Pittsburgh, he in the right scenario, he could be an effective player. And I know just from talking to people who are Minnesota Wild fans, he's not an effective player. He just hasn't lived up to, I think, the potential that everybody thought that he had. I mean, less than a half a point a game is an underachievement for a second round guy who's playing first and second line minutes. I don't think he's going to come in and take over a top 6 position. I do think that if you put him on a third line with like Carter and McCann, that's a really good line.
Another guy that if you don't get Brandon Saad, if Saad does end up pricing himself out, Blake Coleman would be a great.
Coleman was another guy I was looking at on this cap friendly. Yeah. 15 goals, I believe. And, just a solid hockey player, man. A little bit of grit to his game. But yeah, so, I mean, we're going to probably we're going to get Danny on in the next week or two here. And we're going to really do a deep dive into some, NHL offseason stuff and kind of get some analytics on some of these free agents and, see what is actually available to the Penguins and how the salary cap's going to break down and all that kind of stuff. Before we go, you wanted to talk some Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah, I mean, Ben's been talking him up, and I've been seeing people start to get on the Dwayne Haskins hype train. I think that's the problem with NFL offseason is that there's people make things out of nothing because, like, I'm all aboard the Najee Harris hype train, but, like, I was seeing people like, look at him run through the pads, and I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, man. I can't get excited for that. I can't.
His footwork is incredible, though.
It's incredible. I get it. But that's the problem with having a podcast that covers the Steelers is like, what? There's no, like, how come you guys aren't talking Steelers? What do you want us to talk about? What do you want us to talk about? Like, yeah. I don't know.
Chase Claypool dropped a deep ball today.
Ben seems to be now. Again, Ben is funny because I don't know sometimes what you can believe what he says or like if he's being disingenuous or not, because he talks the same no matter what. So he literally could say something and he just truly doesn't believe it and he's saying it to be a smart ass, but he's hyping Haskins up. Now, is that just because they're cool? Is it because Haskins has been saying, oh, Ben's been my favorite player my whole life, blah, 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 blah. Which, again, is funny because there's so many people that swear that Ben's this, like, hated guy. But when you actually talk to the players, it's just not this. It's not what you get a completely, like, Trey Essex been on our show, and he's like, nah, Ben was, like, the best teammate I've ever had. Or is it because Ben has never been that big on Mason, so he's hyping Dwayne up to, like, get it, to get back at them drafting Mason?
I will say this. Is there a clear-cut backup right now?
I think there's going to be a legit battle. I do. I don't think
agree
Dobbs,
with that.
I got to be honest. I think Dobbs, if anything, is probably the odd man out, and that sucks because he seems like a great guy. I watched his interview on Around the 412, and he seems like a great guy, and I do think he has athletic ability. I think the planet would be better off with you going and being a rocket scientist.
Right.
So I think we need more of those guys than backup quarterbacks. So please
well,
go to NASA and make the world a better place.
And I think we can probably end the show on this because this was a long one today. The Jarrod interview went long. It was a good interview.
If we could cut 2 shows.
We might have to look at doing that. But before we go, I do want to shout out around the 412 Zach and Tyler. Yesterday, I got a chance to watch their live stream, and they, the first 15 minutes of their show was dealing with kind of the Naomi Osaka stuff.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And just all the takes around that and, mental health in sports. And I really have to, we had a pretty heavy conversation today, and I don't know whether we handled it well or not, but I hope we did. But, they handled a very heavy conversation, and I don't think they could have handled it better. And I really do want to shout out Zach and Tyler at Around the 412 for how they handled that yesterday, talking about it. Zach being transparent about his struggles in the past, and those are, again, we talk about difficult conversations and conversations people don't like to have. That's one of the ones that needs to continue to be had, especially in the sports world, because the sports world is so macho, and we're not supposed to have weaknesses. We're not supposed to show problems and all that kind of stuff. And I know you've had your bouts with depression as well, and we got to talk about that kind of stuff. And I just want to shout out those guys for having that conversation and putting it out there and doing a really good job with it. So kudos to Zach and Tyler. Zach is the, Pittsburgh Twitter funny guy, but he can get serious and be a philosopher every once in a while, and he did last night. So good on you guys. That's pretty much all I got, Chad. I don't, like I said, we've went long already. You got anything else you want to throw out there or mention, or anything I'm forgetting?
Yes. So on mental health, I hope everyone learns the difference in this is why education is important. There is a clear-cut difference between empathy and sympathy. So with what's the tennis player's name again? I'm sorry, I'm not a big
Naomi Osaka.
I heard there was some really hot takes because she's battling mental health, and it's like she's a famous. Well, for one thing, she can't be that famous because I didn't know her name, but she's around the world. She's famous.
She's the number 2
right.
tennis player.
I don't follow tennis, so but around the world, she is an objectively famous, gifted athlete. So she can't battle mental illness. Now again, there is a difference. I am a lower middle class worker that has a podcast and suffer from major depressive disorder. And I've also been going through custody battles, which are coming to a close. So am I going to be able to have sympathy for her because she's rich, famous, and has resources that I can never have? Probably not. There's no way for me to objectively say, what am I going to do? Feel bad for her? No, I empathize with her. I understand that even if you're rich or poor, this disease that is in our brain affects us probably in the same way. People, the problem with stuff like depression, bipolar disorder, and this stuff like this is the people that don't understand, they're ignorant to it, only have 2 reactions. One is, oh, you're just saying you're depressed. You're just feeling bad for yourself, or they call you crazy. There's
the Dwight Schrute take, and isn't that just a fancy word for being bummed out?
Right.
And then there's like you said, the people who think you're faking it. Yep.
So I've literally been to a neurologist, right? I've had neurologists put all these things on me in my brain, my back. So I will tell you that as suffer from actual depression, and you will be able to tell if someone's just sad or depressed. Listen, I wish it was just sadness. I would throw on some sad albums and cry my eyes out, and then I would be all over, right? Depression, actual depression affects you physically. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about I have back pains, migraines. They've linked my migraine disorder. I suffer from migraines, and my doctor, my neurologist, literally said, yeah, it goes hand in hand with depression because it's messing up your head. Your neurological balance is off, and that's why you have disillusional thoughts and stuff like that. It's so much more than feeling sad. If anything, I think I feel less sad. Like, that's not usually what it is. What it normally is like fatigue, aches and pains, and just like random thoughts. Like, I'll be recording this podcast and I'll think like, while we're doing it, like my brain will be like, remember that time back in 8th grade when so-and-so, like who, like that just shows you that your brain's not on the right track all the time. But again, empathy is just like, I don't know what's happened to our country where like, and again, not to get political, but there's a big portion of this country that fits into this where like empathy isn't a thing. It's like pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And other countries are like, no, we don't want anyone to feel that way. Please come to the doctors so that we can make sure that everything's okay. And here it's like, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. No one should feel sad for you. Again, no one is trying to say to feel sorry for her. My thing is, I hope she gets the help that she needs, and I hope that I get the help. That's empathy.
Yeah.
That is different than feeling sorry. So please just take a moment to look up the definition of sympathy and empathy and learn the difference.
Yeah. And, you know, for me, being in campus ministry, dealing with college students, especially during a pandemic, I mean, it's one of the things that, you know, there is a mental health problem in our society right now. And it's sad. I mean, for me, for somebody who doesn't really, you know, I have my days where I'm down, but I wouldn't call it like full on depression or anything like that. I'm thankful that I don't have that, you know, I don't deal with that. But for me to see people that I love and care about dealing with that on a day-to-day basis and watching them firsthand, you know, my wife battles with severe anxiety and depression and PTSD. It's scary, it's difficult, and you really do have to learn how to sometimes just shut up, be quiet, and just be there for somebody and empathize with them and just learn how to comfort somebody. So yeah. And Chad, I appreciate you, you know, being as open as you just were, man. That's, you know, again, those are the stories people need to hear. People need to hear from people like you and people like Smitty who have been there, are still there sometimes, who have gone through it and have come out on the other end and said, look, this isn't something that just goes away. This isn't something that just like magically disappears. This is something that I live with. I'm learning how to manage. I'm learning how to control, but it's something that's real. I'm not making it up. It's not a joke. It's not something that just, I'm bummed out, I'm having a bad day. This is a real thing. I think a lot of people need to hear that story, man. So I appreciate that. That's it for us. Like I said, this was a long episode. It was at times a heavy episode, but you know, though we have those sometimes. We want to shout out MCM Studios, Mike Hitt, our crew over there. Just appreciate them now for coming up on a half a year of, you know, backing the podcast and sponsoring us and giving us a ton of moral support. And, you know, trust me, it goes way beyond the financial support that they give us. It's a lot more of a, you know, mentorship and reaching out to them for ideas and stuff like that. We appreciate them. We appreciate everybody that's made it this far listening. We will be back next week. At this point in time, who knows if it's going to be RMU hockey? Who knows if it's going to be Penguin stuff or NHL stuff? The next big hit in playoff hockey that potentially kills somebody. Dwayne Haskins throws an 85-yard bomb to Ben Roethlisberger in the back of the end zone. Who knows what it's going to be? But we'll be back next week with more Pittsburgh sports. So thanks. Take care. Have a good week. We'll catch you.
Thanks for listening to 412 Sports Talk. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. If you like the show, leave us a review. And be sure to tell a friend about your source for all things Pittsburgh sports. Find us on Twitter at MadChad412 and at Eddie_P_412.